The Arizona sun was brutal that afternoon, beating down on the dusty border town like a punishment from the heavens. Ethan Hale tugged his hat lower as he rode into the crowded street market, his horse kicking up small clouds of dry earth. He'd only planned to buy salt, ammunition, and maybe a new saddle strap. Nothing more. But fate had its own cruel sense of timing. The sound of shouting drifted across the market, the kind that wasn't ordinary bargaining. Something sharper, uglier. Ethan's instincts pulled him toward the noise, past the meat stalls and horse troughs, until he reached a wooden auction block set up near the sheriff's office. A crowd had gathered. Rowdy men, drunk men, men with bad intentions. Ethan felt his jaw tighten before he even saw what, or who, was being sold. Then he saw her. An Apache woman, maybe in her early 20s, was shoved onto the platform by two outlaws. Her wrists were tied, her ankles scraped from being dragged, her dark hair tangled with dust and dried blood. She wore what used to be a traditional buckskin dress, but it had been torn, ripped apart by rough hands and rougher days. Her eyes lifted, and Ethan felt something twist inside him. Fear lived there. Deep, exhausted fear, but beneath it was a flicker of something stronger, something stubborn, like a fire refusing to die even when starved of air. The auctioneer laughed, raising her chin with the tip of a stick. "Look here, boys, finest Apache stock you'll ever see, strong, young, good for labor, or whatever else you want." The crowd howled with filthy laughter. Ethan's hands curled into fists. He had seen cruel things during his years as a ranger, but this wasn't cruelty. It was hell wearing a human face. "Start and bid $50. Voices rose immediately. Numbers shouted through tobacco-stained teeth. The Apache woman flinched with each bid, her body stiff but her expression empty, like she had learned long ago not to cry. Ethan stepped closer, pushing between two miners. "What are you doing?" one growled. "Getting a better look," Ethan replied coldly. The bidding climbed, 60, 70, 80. The outlaws smirked proudly as if selling a human being were a prize-winning act. Ethan felt his heartbeat hammering in his ears. He didn't come here to be a hero. He didn't come here to make trouble. But something in the woman's eyes, something pleading, silent, broken, made the world around him blur into nothing. He couldn't walk away. "Last call," the auctioneer shouted. 85, anyone for?" 100, Ethan said. The crowd turned. The auctioneer blinked. "Sir." $100, Ethan repeated, louder, firmer. "That's your last," the auctioneer tested. Ethan nodded. He knew it was. It was everything he had left in the world. The gavel slammed against the wood. "Sold." The outlaws cursed, disappointed they didn't get a buyer who wanted her for darker reasons, but they shoved her forward anyway. Ethan stepped up and cut her ropes. She stumbled into his arms, weak from hunger and exhaustion. Her voice trembled. Why would you spend your last dollar for me?" Ethan steadied her gently. "Because nobody deserves to be owned." Her eyes widened, not with fear this time, but with pure disbelief. And for the first time, Ethan realized. He hadn't just bought her freedom. He had changed both their lives. Ethan guided the weakened Apache woman away from the auction block, one steady hand on her arm. The crowd parted reluctantly, staring at him as though he had lost his mind. No one spent their last dollar to free someone, especially not an indigenous woman in a hostile border town. But Ethan ignored them all. He took her behind the market where shade softened the burning Arizona sun. She leaned heavily against the wall of the livery stable, her breathing shallow and uneven. Ethan knelt before her, offering his canteen. She hesitated at first, like she expected it to be a trick. "It's just water," he assured gently. Her cracked lips touched the metal rim and she drank greedily too fast. Ethan steadied her hand, lowering the canteen. "Slow," he warned softly. You'll make yourself sick." She stopped, blinking at him, trying to understand kindness she had never been offered. Her voice came out hoarse. Why would you spend your last dollar for me?" Ethan didn't answer immediately. He simply took out a handkerchief from his pocket and wiped the blood from her temple with remarkable care. She flinched, but not from pain, from confusion. Men had touched her before, but never like this. Never like she mattered. "You didn't deserve what they did to you," he said finally. "That's why." She lowered her gaze, a long, heavy silence hanging between them. When she finally spoke, her words were barely audible. "They say kindness from a white man is never free." Ethan paused. He had heard that sentiment before, and he couldn't blame her for it. This land was harsh and the people harsher. Too many had treated indigenous women as property, tools, or trophies. He felt shame twisting inside him, a shame that didn't belong to him but to the world around them. "Well, they're wrong," he said firmly, "at least about me." She lifted her head again, studying him with eyes that searched for lies. "What's your name?" Ethan asked. "Senya," she murmured. A beautiful name, he thought. "I'm Ethan Hale." She repeated his name softly, as though tasting the unfamiliar syllables carefully. Ethan stood and offered her his coat. She refused at first, unsure of the gesture, but he draped it over her shoulders anyway. "You need warmth more than I do." Senya hugged the coat around herself, trembling, not from cold, but from the strange safety she felt standing beside him. "Can you walk?" Ethan asked. She nodded weakly. He helped her to his horse, lifting her with gentle hands. The moment she settled into the saddle, she swayed, dizzy from hunger. Ethan mounted behind her to steady her, but she stiffened instantly. "You're safe," he whispered. She forced herself to relax, slowly. As they rode out of town, the sun dipped low, painting the land in gold. Senya watched the horizon, still unsure if she was dreaming. No chains, no shouting, no hands dragging her. Just freedom. And one man who gave it without asking for anything in return. "Where are we going?" she finally asked. "To my cabin," Ethan answered. "You need food, rest, and time to heal." She swallowed hard, and after that... Ethan looked at the road ahead. "After that, Senya, your life will be yours again." Her breath trembled, because for the first time in months, maybe years, she believed him. Ethan's cabin sat nestled at the edge of a quiet canyon, surrounded by tall pines and red earth cliffs painted by centuries of wind. It wasn't grand, but it was sturdy, warm, and safe, three things Senya had not known for a long time. As they rode into the clearing, she gazed around in awe. No cages, no fences, no men with guns waiting at the door, just peace. Ethan dismounted first and helped her down. Her legs trembled from exhaustion, but she steadied herself with surprising dignity. Even starved and bruised, she carried the proud posture of her people. He opened the cabin door, letting her step inside first. The smell of cedar and old paper filled the space. A small fire crackled in the stone hearth, casting soft orange light across the room. Senya wrapped her arms around herself, unsure where to stand, what to touch, what to expect. Ethan noticed her discomfort. "You can sit anywhere. This place is yours for now too." She gave him a small, uncertain nod and settled near the fire. Ethan prepared a bowl of stew, simple but hearty, and brought it to her. She stared at the food for several seconds, her eyes filling with something Ethan didn't immediately understand. Gratitude, fear, disbelief. "Go on," he encouraged. She took a small bite, then a bigger one, then another. Within minutes, the bowl was empty. Ethan refilled it without her asking. As she ate the second one, her hands shook, not from hunger this time, but from emotion. Tears threatened to spill down her cheeks, but she blinked them back fiercely. She wouldn't cry in front of him. When she finally finished, Ethan sat across from her, resting his elbows on his knees. "How long were you with them?" he asked softly. She clenched her hands in her lap, too long. He didn't push for more. Instead, he handed her a clean blanket. She wrapped herself tightly, letting warmth seep into her bones. Silence lingered for a few moments. Then she spoke again, quiet but certain. "You saved my life today." Ethan nodded. Anyone with a heart would have done the same. "No," she said firmly. "Most men want something in return." Ethan's jaw tightened, understanding more than she said out loud. "My people," she continued, "believe that when someone saves your life, you owe them your life in return. A life debt, a sacred bond." Ethan leaned back, sensing where this was going, but not prepared for the words she whispered next. "To repay you, I must bear you a child." Ethan froze. Her face was calm, but her eyes trembled, not with fear, but with certainty. She truly believed this was the only way to honor what he'd done. "Senya," his voice came out low, almost pained. "I didn't help you expecting anything, not a child, not loyalty, not anything." She frowned, confused. "But that is our law." "Maybe so," he said gently. "But my law is this: nobody owes me their body or their future." Her breath caught. She had been told her worth was measured only in what she could give: work, pain, obedience, children, anything but choice. "But if you do not claim me," she whispered, "what am I supposed to be now?" Ethan's eyes softened. "Whatever you choose to be." Her lips parted slightly, stunned. No one had ever given her back her own life. And for the first time, Senya wondered. Had she been saved from more than just slavery? Had she been saved from the belief that she was nothing? Night settled over the canyon like a thick velvet blanket. The fire inside Ethan's cabin glowed warmly, but the air between him and Senya remained fragile, soft, uncertain, filled with words she was still trying to understand and feelings he wasn't brave enough to name. Senya sat near the fire, fingers lightly tracing the stitching of the blanket he'd given her. She kept stealing glances at Ethan as he cleaned his rifle, though not because she feared him, because she didn't know what to do with a man who didn't treat kindness like a currency. Finally, she gathered her courage. "When my people speak of life debt," she began quietly, "it is not just a duty. It is a sacred binding, a way of ensuring balance." She swallowed, looking down at her hands. "I believed I had to repay you with a child, because that is what I was taught, that a woman must give her body when she has nothing else." Ethan set the rifle aside, giving her his full attention. "Senya," he said gently, "you're not a debt to be settled." She looked up sharply, her eyes shining in the firelight. "Then what am I to you?" The question struck him hard. He walked toward her slowly and knelt so they were eye level. "You're a woman who's had too much taken from her," he said. "I won't take anything more." Her breath trembled, a crack forming in the wall she'd built around herself for survival. "But if I don't repay you," she whispered, "I will feel unbalanced, like a ghost walking without purpose." Ethan shook his head softly. "You don't repay kindness with sacrifice. You repay it by living, healing, being free." She blinked, stunned by the simplicity of it. Silence followed, a gentle searching silence. Then Senya shifted closer, her blanket slipping slightly from her shoulders. Ethan instinctively reached to adjust it, pulling it back up to keep her warm. She watched his hand, then his face, something deep and unspoken rising in her chest. "No man," she said slowly, "has ever protected my dignity this way." Ethan didn't speak. He didn't have to. Senya placed her hand on his, a small, trembling gesture but brave, braver than any battle she'd survived. "What if," she whispered, "my life debt is not to bear a child?" She lifted her eyes to his. "But to choose you freely." Ethan's breath caught. He touched her cheek, just barely, giving her time to pull away. She didn't. Instead, she leaned into his touch, closing her eyes as though feeling softness for the first time in years. Emotional warmth spread through the small cabin, stronger than the fire. You don't owe me love, Ethan murmured. I know, she whispered. That is why I can give it. They stayed like that, two wounded souls finding balance not through duty, but through choice. When she finally rested her head against his chest, Ethan wrapped his arms around her gently, protectively, reverently. The world outside was harsh, unforgiving, but inside this cabin in this moment, something new was born. Not ownership, not obligation, not a life debt. A beginning. The start of a life she wanted. With a man who never asked for her body, but unknowingly captured her heart.